Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for spending your, what is tonight? Tuesday night with me for this.
Monday.
Monday night? I've lost
Yeah.
track of time. Okay, this is the Winnslie Parkway expansion project. First community meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Beyer. I'm the lead landscape architect for Futurity. I'll be working on the project. My partner, landscape architect Anna Arbetter, will also be working on the project. Anna has been involved in the corridor for a long time. This is actually her standing on the sidewalk at Winnemac by the overpass. Maybe you recognize these stones here behind during the construction. She designed the Winnslie Parkway mark. And this is her during construction.
Okay.
So
I recognize the wall behind her, that 90-degree.
Yep,
Yeah.
right there. Yep, that's probably the day they put those in, actually. Stephen probably is standing behind us somewhere, I would bet, in that picture. So.
Okay.
But here's an outline for the meeting. I'd like to give a little bit overview of the project and talk on different aspects of it. And then I think importantly to talk about the context of this project spatially, where it exists on the corridor, and what opportunities exist, how it's a key piece of creating a very long linear green corridor along Ravenswood. Then I'll talk about the changes that the CDOT plan has for the street and what it means for this for the project area. We'll walk through some of those changes in detail. And I'll talk about some of my initial observations with the site, and I think what their implications are for the design of the site. We'll talk about some of the assets that we have to work with, and then finally we'll finish up with the next steps on the project. So the pink area here is the project site. That's Ravenswood running left to right and Lawrence right here. It's a very long and relatively narrow site. It's over 1,000 feet long, which is 3 football fields. And I've got these statistics that Mark and Stephen are familiar with from when we were developing pursuing the funding with the city for this. It's the undeveloped land is the existing area between the curb and the fence line. That's 15,000 square feet. The expansion that's created by the redesign of the street is another 10,500 feet, which gives us a total area of 25,000 square feet, which is really significant. That's 6/10 of an acre. An acre is roughly 208 feet on a side. So we're looking at something that's a green space that's 100 feet by 100 feet. So a 10-story building by a 10-story building. That's the rectangle we're creating. That's pretty significant. And that doesn't happen in the city of densest Chicago very often. So it's a very interesting development that we were able to get this 10,500 feet added to the existing space to create something it's a significant amount of area. Considered a sort of we've created this sort of ground for a secret park right in the middle of the neighborhood, and nothing had to be changed to get it, really. It's a very unique situation. So that's the project site. The project overview was obtained through the open space impact fee that the Alderman, the 47th Ward, Alderman Matt Martin was instrumental in getting. Mark, Stephen, and many others worked an awful lot on moving this forward over multi-year period. I can't even tell you how many years it was. I think it was possibly 3 we worked on this. It was a significant effort. Um, First, we presented some initial ideas to the alderman's office, got them thinking about it. We did the Friends of Winnslie Parkway walking tour once. I believe it was 2 years ago to get people more energized. Josh Mark from the alderman's office was there. And one thing led to another. There became more traction to it. And um, the alderman's office was aware of the issue with the no southbound access for bikes, movement through bikes through that area. So that that need and the need for addressing the street function coupled with our interest in creating green space there. And that led to um, moving the idea up into the Chicago Department of Planning and Development, and then the allocation of the OSIF funding to the project. So the grant amount is 303,000. It's being administered by NeighborSpace. They're the grant administrator. We actually work for NeighborSpace. We're the consultant to NeighborSpace. The anticipated construction is this summer, possibly into this fall. So I'll talk about this a little later in the presentation, but design is this spring and early summer. And then as soon as we finish that, we'll move into getting construction bids and then hopefully construction soon after that. So our goal is to have this built by this fall. A reason why that we're moving along relatively quickly with that is because the streetscape is going to happen this year also. And we want to have the construction work begin shortly after the streetscape is done. What is the matter here? So here's the context, which I think is very fascinating. So on the south end here is Lawrence. On the north end here is Peterson. And the dark green areas, and this is a little hard to read because it's such a long area. It's 1.5 miles long from here to here. So we have these long linear spaces here. The dark green areas, this is right here is Winnslie Parkway. And then here is the West Andersonville Gardens. Here's the West Edgewater area residence gardens here. So those are examples of established community green spaces, community gardens.
Don't forget Christie Gardens, David.
And of course, Christie Gardens, yeah, right in there, right there. The light green areas are undeveloped land. Basically, it's potential green space. So when we look at it in its entirety, we can see how important Winnslie Parkway is as a gateway, linking together the existing Winnslie Parkway, Christie Gardens, and getting pretty close to West Andersonville Gardens there. And if you start to imagine, you can see the importance of Winnslie Parkway expansion to that, but it's not too far of a stretch to see an entire greenway system extending north-south through the city, 1.5 miles long. And what makes it very interesting is you can see right here, right where I'm highlighting as an example, on the east side of Ravenswood, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 streets. Where the greenway would be, there's no street interruption. It's continuous. So that's the beauty of the embankment and working on the embankment. And we see the same thing where Winnslie Parkway currently exists, and the expansion project tacks into that. Ainsley, on the east side of the street, you have to cross Ainsley. On the west side of the street, it's a continuous greenway. So what excites me about this is that you can move along the embankment, and the number of streets that you cross is significantly less than the number you would cross on the east side of the street. Okay, another part of the context, I want to talk about Winnslie Parkway and then Christie Gardens because I think they're representative of the community and diligence and resilience and sticking to things and ending in a good result. So first, Winnslie Parkway. And Gene, you know this history well. And Stephen, you know it well too. This is some pictures from Stephen here. And my guess is this is in the mid 90s here, probably this one.
Right.
Stephen, you can let me know. Um, this is the Winnslie Parkway looking north, probably at roughly Ainsley, would be my guess. Some of you will remember these big cottonwood trees that were there. And this is a picture that Stephen took when they were putting the plantings in. He's got some mulch piles there that they're going to cover the whole embankment of the mulch, um, probably in the mid 90s. Over here on the right are the retaining walls that Stephen had built around those large cottonwood trees using pieces of concrete, salvaged concrete. So it was an effort to protect this green space from becoming parking areas, and it was very successful. And then the metro reconstruction of the railroad tracks happened, and there was a need to do construction on the west side of the tracks. But in order to do that, they had a tunnel bore through from the east side. So unfortunately, we lost those great cottonwoods. We lost the landscape. There's the trunks of the cottonwoods sitting there. I think Stephen and I went out and counted tree rings that day. Mark, you were there also. Roy, you were around. We were all very saddened by that. Um, but what came out of it was funding to design and build a new park. And this is a uh, very early three-dimensional model rendering of that terrain. These are the blocks here are abutment blocks that we were salvaging. And that's the pathway there. And that's the terrain for what is now currently Winnslie Parkway. And that's roughly about where, Mark, your picture for your holiday card was taken. So standing
Okay.
kind of where this view is where your card is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's example one of, I think, important things that we need to think about for the how we got here and what we could apply to this project. Example two is Christie Gardens. And Stephen had a great thing going here for a long time. You can see the sign up here. And then one day, we realized that they were going to replace the curbs along Ravenswood here. They were sandstone curbs from probably the quarries in Lorain, Ohio. And if you're not familiar with these, they would be about 30 inches deep and 6 or so feet long, single pieces of stone that were set. So all along Ravenswood, from Winnemac to Foster, these curbs existed on the west side of the street. So one day, when I was walking to work, I noticed they were being pulled up. I called Stephen and said, Stephen, we need to grab these stones. These are incredible. They're priceless. Stephen calls Gene. Gene does his thing. Um, and then right in the middle of the trucks, putting the stones into the dump truck, we were able to stop them and get them to set the stones aside for us to use on the parkway. And you can't, they're here. You can't quite see them, but they're lying here. So the contractor agreed to set them aside for us to use. And there were a lot. There were probably 100 or 200 stones. And that's what Stephen then used to construct these, the walls that exist today. They're the old curbstones that were right here in the street. Um,
David,
yeah,
I have to revise your story somewhat
sure.
because it was really both these projects. If we didn't have Gene Schulter around, they wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
And it was Gene, when he knew they were going to redo Ravenswood, who insisted, when I asked him, that the contractors pull up and save the stones. I don't think they were ever going to haul any away because Gene set it up where they'd pick them up and set them aside for us. So again, my thanks to so much of this work goes to Gene and his interest. I remember him coming up and down Ravenswood all the time, watching what we were doing on both projects. Thank you, Gene.
Yeah,
You're
definitely.
welcome.
Yeah.
It
And
was
as
fun.
you know, they're pieces of history, which you know, a lot of them have interesting markings on them, and they're just fantastic. And you can see the bore holes in some, and the cutting, and it's great stuff. So what I what I like about this is it was a vision of what something could be. So in case of Winnslie Parkway and Christie Gardens, vision of what could be, um, and a commitment to bring an idea to fruition, not just actually not just fruition, but and maintain it, and creativity to work with whatever we have. So you know, Stephen was working with concrete there on the you know the first basically the first version of Winnslie Parkway, concrete to build a retaining wall. Um, and you know, there was earth that he was able to get to elevate that, to create that embankment. Here it was just Gene got the stones, and Stephen, we figured out what to do with them after we got the stones. The same thing is where things stand now with the abutment blocks and everything else. So these are, you know, commitment and involvement, creativity, recognizing opportunities. These are all things that have brought the Winnslie Parkway project right now to where it is and will continue to carry us through the design and development of it. Okay, so this is the new streetscape design in very broad terms. Um, and I'm going to show three detailed views on this. So I know it might be a little hard to see at this scale, but we'll jump to these detailed views here in the next couple of slides to give you a little bit more clear idea of what's going on here. But in broad terms, we have three new crosswalks here. This is in front of Concordia Care. Here, and then out by Ainsley right here. This one is an elevated crosswalk. I believe this one's also elevated. This one is at on the surface, just markings here. We have traffic calming practices, including, you know, those elevated crosswalks, markings for the cyclists. On the southbound, which we're only seeing part of it here, from just south of Ainsley up to Winnemac, this black line that you're seeing here is actually a protected bike lane for southbound cyclists. It changes to a marked bike lane shortly after Ainsley, heading all the way down to Lawrence, because there's a parallel parking area here, here, and here. So the biking lane will be demarcated by striping on the street.
David, I'm having
Mhm.
a little difficulty seeing the pointing that you're attempting to do. I don't know whether others can see that. And I don't know if
Do you see
I
my
don't see your
laser?
cursor.
Yeah, the arrow disappears sometimes.
Okay, I'll move a little slower. All right. Um, and we also have more green space, which I talked about before, and I'll show you dimensionally what that is. So that's the big picture. We have a more calm traffic flow So people won't be flying up Ravenswood anymore. It'll be a much more functional street with clear places to park. I mean, to cross the street. Um, and we'll have more green space, more space for green space. So let's look at these. We'll start with that detail on the left at Lawrence. Here it is. So can you see these dimensions here? 11 feet 2 inches and 11 feet 1 inches in the pink area.
Hmm.
So the top dimension, 11 foot 1, is the distance from the fence to the existing curb. And then the dimension below that, 11 feet 2 inches, is the distance from the existing curb to the new curb. So you can see it's gone from 11 feet 1 inch wide space to 22 feet roughly wide space, double the width. And that's all the way up the corridor, double the width. So there's that, increase in area that we're achieving here. Below that, you can see the parallel parking area. Below that, you can see the southbound cyclist lane that'll be marked with pavement markings. There are pavement markings in Ravenswood clearly indicating that it's a shared street for northbound cyclists. There'll also be new crosswalk texturing on Lawrence and quite a bit more streetscape improvement on Lawrence, and then I believe further south on Ravenswood too. So there's a lot more going on than just this section of Ravenswood. We're in the preliminary stages of modeling this design in 3 dimension. So what you see here on the right is what that intersection is going to start to look like. The brown is the texture for the sidewalk, and the green in the background is the enlarged landscaping area, the green space. This is the crossing at Concordia Care in front of just west of Concordia Care there. And again, it's going from the pink area is going from roughly 11 and a half feet wide to 22 feet wide, 23 feet wide total
There
here.
we go. Okay.
Yep. They were expanding the green area, the entrance to the green area, to allow for to bring the pedestrian out into the traffic and see past the parked cars, become more visible because there'll be parallel cars to the left and to the right. This is the raised pedestrian crossing table. So it'll be, it goes up a little bit, a couple inches slope, and then it's flat, and then it goes down. So it's slow. It serves dual purpose. It's clearly see that's a pedestrian crossing area, and it's a traffic calming device also. So that will be a nice crossing area there too. You can see the striping here in the 3D view here, and you can see how these extend out. These two areas on the left and the right extend out to narrow the street. And finally, up by Winnslie, the existing Winnslie Parkway, there's the third crossing area that goes through the protected bike lane. So that's the curbing, the concrete curbing that you may have seen on some of the streets in the city here. That's extending along to the left and to the right of this crosswalk. To the right of the crosswalk, that protected curbing will run all the way up to Winnemac. And what I think is what's great about this is there will no longer be parked cars along Winnslie Parkway here, which, I look at from a landscape architecture view. Number one, it's aesthetically going to be a lot nicer. Number two, it's much safer for people here on the parkway. If you've got kids running around, playing on the green space, sliding down the hill, there's a buffer, like considered a safety buffer before the car traffic, and that safety buffer is the bike lane. So there's a lot more visibility of the park. It's a lot more safer to for active play in the park. And it will just open up the view of the park significantly when you're driving along. It's sort of going to come to that space. If you're driving north in your car and all of a sudden it's just going to be park to your left, there's going to be nothing in between you and the park. You're just going to see it full view. So the experience will change dramatically. On the right is a view roughly where Winnslie Parkway ends, and you can see a view heading south, and you can see the protected bike lane structure running along here. Mark and others who are familiar with Winnslie Parkway, this is where the big Taxus evergreen bushes are, and the control tower for the signal tower for Metras right in here, this area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the design. That's the streetscape design mainly. And this is some initial thoughts on what that means. Like how does that start to change what the potential greenscape could be, or sort of directs it on what it could be. First of all, we have some different points of connection from the green space to what's around it. First of all, in the south end is Lawrence Avenue District. This is a significant node, if you will, a neighborhood node, a connection to other neighborhoods, a connection to the neighborhood on the west side of Ravenswood, a connection to the neighborhood south of the park, a connection to transit systems and shopping, business, all the vitality that is Lawrence Avenue. So it's a gateway spot for this park and for the larger potential green space system that I talked about earlier. That's one type of connection. The other types of connections are these blue arrows here, what I'd consider to be neighborhood connections. So the way a neighborhood connection might work would be you're walking along under the Metro Bridge on Lawrence, heading say east on Lawrence, and you cut into the site there at the main node, and you walk along, and then you cross the street at this traffic calming table right here to the condominiums that are along here or right in here, or to go to Concordia Care. That's a neighborhood connection. So you're going into the neighborhood. You might walk a little further along there, and you might live in these buildings right here. You pop out of that neighborhood into that neighborhood connection there. And finally, you might walk all the way up because you live further east down Ainsley, maybe on Hermitage or something like that. And you're going to pop off that neighborhood connector to go into that area. So there's different points of entering and exiting the site, depending on what your need is. The third kind of connector here is the Greenway corridor. And so if you think of this part as, a subunit of the corridor, you're going into the existing parkway, or you're going further even north up to Christie Gardens or beyond to there. So it's sort of you're going through a doorway into those other areas. So those are the 3 points of connection. They also have different types of zones here. We have entry zones, which are with these connectors at the nodes here, the node and these neighborhood connectors where you come into the green space. Here's another one and another one here. You have internal green space areas where you're moving between those connection points. And then you have a transition space where you're moving further on into the parkway or further up into the greenway system. So that's to me is very interesting because there's different ways and so it's programmatic behavior, and there's different ways we can start to capitalize on that to create a series of unique spaces and experiences for people as they enter off of Lawrence, they walk through, they come to a different scale entry point, they might leave it, they might go further up, pass through another entry point, pass through another one, go through a gateway, connect up to the current Winnslie Parkway. So it's really interesting things that we can start to do with that as designers. Another interesting thing that I thought about when we were looking at this is the existing land is just, it's over there by the fence. It's just something you can't really get into. You can look at it. It's very one dimensional, but you can't experience it. You can't get into that space. The new space, because of its width and because of these factors I just discussed, you can look at the space from the outside. You'll have a different experience at different positions along Ravenswood as you look at it. But more importantly, you'll have a different view in the space. You'll be in the space and look at it, look out from the space, or look down the space. Down the space would be north-south. Out would be maybe a seating area that's here or a seating area that's here, where you look out on Lawrence or you look out across the crosswalk there as you're waiting for somebody. So your experiences are going to change significantly, and it's going to go from what is currently a static aesthetic space to something that's much more multidimensional, much more functional. And then finally, our assets for this. And I've got a couple examples here. Our asset is Lawrence Avenue, that node I mentioned in the last slide. That's an asset. Another asset is the connection with Winnslie Park, the existing current Winnslie Parkway. So we have those two terminus points that are very vibrant, they're very established, and we can connect to those, which is a very powerful thing. We also have what I think is kind of interesting. We have a terrain asset. This not very attractive picture is the south end at Lawrence. And you can maybe just see that we have a change in grade here of roughly 4.5, 5 feet. It's 4.5, 5 feet higher than the street. That's pretty significant for Chicago, as we all know. And that lends itself to a different type of seating area, all kinds of different design things we can do with that to take people up to a higher level, a higher elevation, so they can have maybe a vantage point looking down at Ravenswood or a vantage point looking up Ravenswood. And remember, that's an entry point too, so that's a really interesting place to do that. We have that same elevation change up at the north end at Ainsley that taps right into the current park system there. Again, it presents a great place to look down the corridor or down the space. So that I'd consider that an asset. And then these last two things here are really our scavenging assets. This first one is thanks to Mark. He got the pilings from the old, from the temporary Metra platform. When they were tearing it down, we thought these would be good. We could use these for something. So we have, I think about 10, Mark. I think we have 10 pilings there.
12 of them.
12 of them.
12.
Yep. And we will be able to do something very interesting with those. And then we, of course, have the abutment blocks that I'm sure all of you have seen. We can use those in a variety of ways, for example, to help retain these elevated areas, seating areas, create seating areas, all kinds of things. So they'll give us the ability to have a varying height as you move along that long linear space, because they can function as a retaining wall. So those are just a couple assets, a few assets. I'm sure there's some more, and we will use them in all kinds of ways. Okay, so where are we in the design process? Our current community meeting is right about here. I don't have a call out showing it, but it's right about here. We've been primarily working on building up what we call our base file information, which is creating the CAD drawing and the modeling that we then use during the design process. And we're finishing that up, documenting conditions. That's the site inventory and analysis phase here. It's our background work, understanding the site. These three phases here: concept design, master plan, design development. They're what you'd consider the classic design phases. Concept design is very in a way generic, just building a framework. Master plan is more specificity, layouts of hardscapes, clusters of trees, topography, where a retaining wall might be, and design development is actually making the construction documents for that master plan. So what we're planning to do is, you can see our timeline here, going through roughly the end of June on the far right. We started in early January of this year. We were hoping to have a community meeting to discuss concept plan ideas in roughly, I believe it's mid-April. And then another community meeting in mid-May to talk about the master plan. And we will take that information then and we'll develop the construction documents basically from May into June. And when that's done, the project will go out to bid, go through whatever review the city is going to require, and then go out for construction bid. So future meetings would be roughly early May and mid-May, roughly speaking. And there'd be reviews of drawings at that time and just hashing through some ideas. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to talk about anything you guys want to talk about now. I'm going to send out a survey next few days that's going to ask not just us on the call, but everybody who's expressed an interest in this project and how you see yourself using this space. What do you see you or your family using this space? Is it, for example, I plan to use it to walk home from work on Lawrence. I'm going to walk up to Ainsley. I plan on playing there with my kids, and this is what we like to do. I plan on looking at tracking bird species, and this would be a great place to do it. That kind of thing. That helps us understand what you would like to see the space become. And then we can use that to start to shape that concept design that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to send this to you as a survey. It'll be short, couple questions, just select the things that are important to you. You can probably do the survey in 15 seconds and you're done. It's critical information. So I hope you guys have time to do that. Anybody else that gets it too. And then you can email me anytime. This is my email here, davidbyer@futurityinc.com. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I'll leave it up here so you can take it down. Please email me if you have questions or comments, or ideas. I'd like to also fit in, if possible, a on-site walkthrough, maybe with the concept design, maybe between the concept and the master plan. We'll figure it out. It might be kind of fluid when we do it, but to meet maybe at Lawrence and Ravenswood and walk the corridor, maybe with some 3D views of, proposed conditions and that sort of thing, and just talk through some ideas. So I'll keep you posted about that. That would be, again, at least in May sometime or early June. And that's what I have.
David, Gene Shelter here.
Yeah,
When you talk about the elevations, I'm sure that you, in your notes, probably have notified everybody. The reason why you have these changes in elevations in the embankment is because in 1893, the city council voted on an ordinance requiring the trains to be elevated, train tracks to be elevated in Chicago. And so that's the reason why you have the embankment to begin with and the different configurations of it. And I might add a historical point. President Lincoln used this railroad when he went up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Really?
So we have a lot of historical things going on here. So it's
That's
kind
pretty
of interesting. But if you're in the suburban areas, you have, and even sections of the city where you have the another branch of the metro, they're at surface, so that disrupts traffic and everything else. So one of the reasons why the city of Chicago was there were so many deaths, people getting hit by trains in the city, required them to be elevated. So just I'm sure you knew about that, but I think the people in the neighborhood might not be aware of that.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gene.
Great plans.
Hey, David, this is super exciting. And I know it's not under your direct purview, but once this is all built, what would then be the planning for the ongoing maintenance of this and how the neighborhood gets involved?
That's we've had some initial conversations with Neighbor Space about that. We've talked to Mark's organization, Friends of Winnslie Parkway, about that, but nothing's been finalized yet. So it's sort of floating up there. We're all interested in kind of having a group conversation to talk through what options exist and how to do it. We certainly have interest. So we need to have that, get you guys together with Mark and Neighbor Space and just talk through what are options there, how we can go about doing it.
Count Ravenswood Neighbors Association, Infrared, and our Corner and Parkway gardeners I'd love to get them involved with this expansion too. So this is great.
Okay. Yep. Well, we'll figure that out. That's on our to-do list. We haven't gotten to it yet, but
No worries.
anybody else have any more questions? Okay,
No
well,
questions, but I would just say I'm really excited about this project, and I'm very appreciative of everyone who's been a steward of Winnslie Parkway and Alderman Schulter. I mean, this is a really, really wonderful addition to the neighborhood, and I am very excited to participate in whatever I can to continue that stewardship. So thank you for bringing this project forward, and it's just wonderful to see it take place.
hey, Clark, I'll have to say, you guys have some neighborhood heroes, and Mark, Stephen, Gene. It's like this baton that gets handed off. Somebody runs with it for 10, 15 years or more, and they hand it off to somebody else. Multiple people running and picking up these batons, and the amount of effort and energy that has gone into this is mind blowing. I can tell you, I've watched it, I witnessed it. Mark over and over and over again doing things. Mark and Roy and Stephen endlessly building community support, and it's something you guys should be really, really proud of, because it's just this network there that people don't give up. It's like I was saying before about resilience and discipline and just going for it. They don't give up, and it took a number of years for us to get to this point right where we are tonight, this conversation. It took hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I don't know, I'm pretty in awe because a lot of communities don't have that. Okay, thank you all. I'm gonna stop the recording.
I just want to emphasize again, Gene Schulter, who's older even than I am, because he was the pioneer of all of this going back into the 70s. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I cherry picked my history, you guys, because Stephen relays this to me, and we only had so much time, but there's this whole stuff that predates that first version of Christie Gardens that Gene was involved in, up and down the corridor. There's all kinds of stuff that, like I said, one piece led to another piece, and things move along, but they move along in a very positive direction where you ended up with Winnslie Parkway. So it's something to be very proud of.
Well, I'd like to just add one more thing, taking off what Stephen was talking about, and that was my wife was born and raised in and around the 4800 block of Hermitage, and they would go down Ravenswood, and it was always a place to dump your stuff. If you were remodeling your house, you had old tires, you would dump them on Ravenswood, the people would.
Mhm.
And you know, Ravenswood at one time, the whole corridor was did not have sewers, did not have lighting systems, had nothing. But incrementally over the years, we were able to latch onto federal funds to redo great stretches of the street. And while we were doing that, we incorporated the green component. And every year we had a fundraiser at Ravenswood Hospital to help raise seed dollars to do planting in the area, to help the volunteers to do the planting. And that's one of the things that we're lacking today. If you go down Ravenswood, um, even after we had the tremendous work that was done by Union Pacific with the viaducts, and before that, we do not have the maintenance that we really should have. And that stretches all the way from Addison to up to Foster Avenue.
Yeah.
And that's really quite a shame that that there's no program in place to work on that. And part of this has to do with the SSA that was created there, SSA 31. The reason why I helped create the SSA 31 was to provide the necessary dollars to do the maintenance of the embankment. And that's no longer the case. So Mark, Stephen, myself had a meeting with Gene Wagensdorf at the chamber, who is the lead person on the SSA 31, to somehow reinvigorate or instill with the commissioners that, you know, the goal here, the reason why we have the SSA 31 in many ways is because we were supposed to use those dollars to help us with the maintenance. Now, they might say that they do some, but it's not enough. They need to be more engaged. And I'm not trying to single anybody out here, but these are the facts of life. And you are the leaders of the community. David, you talked about passing the baton on to the next generation. You know, we've done that, but we also got to pass the baton on to the next generation in terms of doing something with the maintenance. You know, the volunteers are all good, well-intentioned, but they need the resources as
Right.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep.
I'll keep my mouth shut.
No, I think
No,
that's
it's,
very good. Thanks, Gene. We need to hear that.
yeah,
So it's up
that's
to
the
you
reality of it.
to
Yeah.
work on SSA 51. You are you are the taxpayers in the area. How those dollars are divvied up and spent is something the community as a whole should have, I think, a bigger say in. And let the community know the reason why this SSA was created in the first place. Nobody likes to add another tax base onto the people in the area, but we thought that that was the only alternative that we had at the time, because we'd ask people, "Would you cut the grass in front of your factory?" And they said, "Oh, sure," and they would never do that. And I said, the best way is we don't have to ask people to do their stuff; we'll just do it for them. And it was beautiful for many years, but it's really, if you take a look at it, it's in these areas, there's a lot of love that has to go around still. Anyway,
Mhm. Okay, people. Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
David.
thank you.
Yep. All right. Talk to you soon.
Great, thanks.